2. And welcome to the Steelers Depot live stream here on this Monday, July 10th. I am Alex Kozora, as always, here for the next hour as Dave, Bryan, and I answer your Pittsburgh Steelers questions as soon as I get the stream pulled up on my end. Dave, is the stream up on your end? Are you here, and how you doing?
Yeah, I see it up here. I just muted it though, so I don't get the feedback and
Sure.
all there. Doing fine on this Monday. The burning question: who's going to win the home run derby tonight?
There's no Pirates in it, right? I don't even know. I know Pete Alonso's in it, and that's about all I know. Do you know anybody else that are in?
Nah. I've seen them run the ticker. There's not any Pirates in it that I know of.
Right. I'm not even sure the other names who are participating. It's kind of like the dunk. It's better than the dunk contest because the dunk contest, you just get some guys I've never heard of. The home run derby, you kind of get some more notable names. But we are here, and thank you for the 10 people already in the chat as I continue to get set up and get the site up for you guys. So here to answer your Steelers questions, be sure to drop them in the chat. And if you want to send us a super chat and go to the front of the line, you certainly can. No obligation to do so. If you guys could at least hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate that. And we will dive on in with the questions here, starting with Lumberzack94 says, "Hey fellas, as things sit right now, would either of you be comfortable re-signing Cam after 2024? This is a scenario assuming he has similar production and no injuries. If so, for how long and how much?" Just off the top, I would be. I mean, if he's still going strong, even though he'd be a 36 at that point, I would not be looking to kick Cam Hayward out if his production is similar and the dude is healthy. In terms of the money, I really couldn't tell you, but it's a guy I want to have as long as I can.
Yeah, look, I mean, assuming all those things, I mean, that's 2 full seasons. I mean, at least, as we pointed out, I don't know, when was it, on a podcast or in a post or something like that? The last time that he missed a game due to injury was way back in, what year did we say that was? 17 or 16 when he had that torn pectoral injury and all like that. Now he's missed, I think, what did we determine, 2 games since then, but both those were week 17 games, and it was a healthy scratch, get ready for the playoffs type situation there with him. But man, two seasons, that's a long time. That's 34 regular season games, and hopefully we're talking about a couple of playoff games mixed in there as well too. But I mean, in a perfect world, stays healthy, stays productive. I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't consider it. I'm kind of wondering though, Alex, when it comes to Hayward, is let's look toward 2023. Stays healthy, stays productive, somewhere around that 10 sack total, whether it be 8.5 or obviously higher, the better. Plays at least another 75%, or greater of the snaps. He's going to consider himself super undervalued at that point. There'll probably be a few more contracts to come in across the board of defensive tackles. Might next off season, because he's got a pretty chunky cap number in 2024 as well too, which is technically right now scheduled to be the final year of his contract. Do you consider maybe next off season signing him to, let's say, a 2-year extension, and then the byproduct of that should be his cap number coming down a little bit. You obviously up him a little bit in the average yearly value category, make it a little bit more respectable. And then at that point, the plan would be, the 3 more seasons, I guess, at a total of 3 more seasons past 2023 at that point. So I really think that this 2023 season really holds the key as to Cam Hayward's potential future past the end of this current contract. I really think there's a decent chance, if he stays healthy, stays productive, and yada yada, that perhaps there's a chance maybe we could be talking about an extension next offseason.
I think you said it well. I think that's probably the more relevant and likely question. I know Cam had said, did he say a couple months ago 3 more years. I guess that would include 2023. So playing through 2025. No one's holding him to that. It's all dependent on a million factors, but I think that was kind of the first time he had set a timetable for how much longer he wants to go.
Yeah, look, and if you next off season, if you signed him to a 2-year extension, you would obviously you'd like to see him play out all 3 years, but at the very minimum, you'd like to get the next 2 years out of him at that point there. So I think if there's going to be talk about, once again, we'll see how 2023 goes for him. But if he, stays healthy and productive, 8.5 sacks or thereabouts, and stays on the field and doesn't miss any games due to injury, I think that could be potentially something we're talking about next summer.
And Jeremy Nelson says, re-sign Cam for whatever he wants. Dude is a 100% Steeler, and I agree with you. I think Cam really embodies everything it means to be a Steeler, both on and off the field. David Kapoor says, is Dave going to the Vegas game? You going out there week 3 to Vegas, Steelers, Dave?
No, I'll be covering it right here from this chair in my in the Metroplex here.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't like big crowds, and obviously we'll have work to do covering the game and all like that. So no, it's going to be packed here with Steelers fans. It really is, and it's going to be exciting to see Steeler Nation really take over Vegas. I would imagine it'd probably be a pretty solid 50-50 split, in the fan bases there at the stadium there for that game.
Mike Adesso says, so who from Steelers Depot will be at camp this year? I'm driving up from Miami again this year, praying not to get rained out for Friday Night Lights like last year. Any other days I should go? To the latter question, the first day in pads, which is now I think the 5th day of practice. I'll have to go back and double check the schedule. It's been tweaked over the years, but I believe it's day 5. Is always a really fun, intense one when guys can finally hit and release some of that anger and frustration under that hot Latrobe sun. I'll be there. Tim Rice will be there for about the first 10 days. I'm not sure who else may be there. Potentially Dr. Mel. I think she'll be there. Maybe some others like Josh Carney, but I know me and Tim will definitely be there to start training camp.
Yeah, I think Josh tries to get out there a time or two, and David O probably show up out there, for a couple of the practices and all. So, and I think Dr. Mel's talking about going out there this year. So, yeah, there'll be some Depot people floating around out there.
Jared Mayock says, thanks for the Q&A, fellas. We're spoiled by the great off-season content generated by the hardworking Depot crew. What do you think of the Paul Skeens pick? Can't wait to see him in the rotation. A little Buccos action there, number 1 pick. This time, just about 24 hours ago. Quick thoughts there. I was preferring Dylan Cruz over Skeens, but I was good with either of the top LSU guys, so I think either one is just fine by me.
Man, I didn't know who hardly any of those guys were until the College World Series, really, because watched obviously a little bit of that, and before that, obviously there was the talk about the 2 LSU guys, one of them potentially being the Pirates' first round pick. Man, yeah. You can't go wrong with pitching, I don't think. And, well, obviously I don't know a lot about Skeens there, but I mean, it seems like he might be the real deal. And you hear some of the, quote unquote experts talk and saying he's just maybe a hair below, kind of can't miss type prospect. But we all know there's, you can't predict that kind of stuff. But pitching, give me pitching.
I just worry about the arm injury. One injury can change the whole career, but yeah, it's hard to be too mad about arguably the best player and certainly the best pitcher in the draft. Captain Spartan 04, what would y'all's thoughts be on adding Antoine Winfield Jr. in free agency next year? Be cool to have family legacy guys, and Tomlin did coach his dad. Dave, your thoughts on adding Antoine Winfield Jr.?
Boy, he's a guy that I stalked quite a bit prior to that year's draft. And, because of the ties and because I think, I don't know, what was it, visits or Tomlin at around him at, forget what it was. But they definitely had kind of ties to him. And that year I could have really, seen him be in play for the Steelers. So I mean, obviously we'll have to see what happens this year with injuries and how some of these veterans do and all like that. But I think it's plausible as we sit here, this far out right now. Without a doubt, I think they like him, and I think they could. With the past interest that they've shown in him, and as we've seen in the past in this kind of situations here, they have no problem circling back to some of those guys that were kind of on several of our short list and all like that of players that they might draft. So I'll just end it at this. I think it's a plausible type situation there when it comes to him.
Yeah, it's a fair thought. I hadn't watched this game too much in Tampa Bay. If he could be slot, can he play strong safety? Is he? I know he's a hitter. Is he big enough, do you think, Dave, to play in the box?
Potentially. I haven't, once again, obviously covering the Steelers, you don't get all that much time to look elsewhere, but it seems like he's played pretty well overall.
Yeah. So
and he could potentially be a box player.
Yeah, and definitely some work in the slot, I think, and maybe he can wear a lot of hats. There's versatility in his game, and yeah, we'll see if Tampa Bay can afford him. They just paid Davis and Dean this offseason, so they got some money tied up in that secondary. So it's a fair thought, but it is just less than a year away, and who the heck knows what'll happen by then. John Pennington, hello, Dave and Alex. Who do you guys think will be a surprising cut that's not on your radar, and will Tomlin open up the passing offense? I mean, if I give an answer, he's kind of on my radar, so it's hard to give a name. I don't think they'd be shocks, but I think guys like Isaiah Loudermilk, Trey Norwood, those third-year guys are really kind of bubble players entering the year that probably aren't thought about too often when it comes to potential cuts, but those are guys that I think need to have good summers in order to secure the roster spot.
Yeah, you've got a lot of those kind of middle-of-the-road guys that, that wouldn't be shocks, Montravius Adams, Gunnar Olszewski, Loudermilk, Norwood, those kind of guys. So who would be a shocker?
I know you floated Levi Wallace occasionally. I know you're not saying that, but
I'm not saying. I think that's an outlier that, if things go a certain way in camp and maybe these younger kids start but then again, you got a guy with experience. Like the key factor there is if Wallace gets passed by a couple of these young guys and he's not a special teams asset, that's really where it hurts them the most. But on the flip side, you like to have as many guys as possible that have experience. He obviously has some NFL experience and specifically a year in Pittsburgh last year, though. He would be the one that I would throw out there that would cause that obviously would get the most pushback in there. And once again, I'm not saying he's going to be. I'm just saying that if it happened, remember who talked about it.
I hear you.
That kind of thing. But I mean, anybody else on this roster? I mean, obviously, if you're going to put a 53-man roster together, prediction right now, you'd have a good, your final 5 or 6 spots would include, probably 8 or 9 names that you're trying to decide on there. But I don't think there's really would be a huge surprise from I don't know, Zach Gentry. Maybe he's a guy that you get deeper into this thing, and maybe you need a roster spot, and Washington has a great summer. And
it's not a shock, though. I wouldn't call that a shock.
Yeah, well, a lot of people I think right now would have him on their 53-man roster.
Sure. Yeah, I got you. But I think when they draft Washington, it kind of says, okay, Gentry, your role is going to be reduced.
Right. So, if you want a couple of names that probably might be a tad bit more questionable than what the masses have, maybe those 2 names.
I have another question for you, but before I ask that, I want to ask you guys to hit the like button. Would really appreciate that. Bring in more Steelers Nation into this chat. I want to say hello to the people that have popped in with Joey Jr., Steel Pastor, Frank, and Boss Una. I appreciate you guys being there. Also, Allie Howard is back in the chat as well. Will every free agent signing that Omar Khan made this summer make the 53-man roster, Dave? Because under Kevin Colbert, it always was, besides Kevin Barlow, all the guys he signed would make the roster. Will that happen under Omar Khan and all the additions this year?
And I think that stat's mostly related to the first key turning point when unrestricteds no longer count against the compensatory. Isn't it something related to that? Because obviously they've had ads in the offseason after. What you're talking about is you're talking that those the
first wave, before the comp period ended. I guess I'm saying here.
Yeah,
before the draft.
Man, I would think so from where we sit, right? You know, maybe the most questionable one would be, or two might be, you know, either or, you know, Fehoko or Watts.
That's what I'm getting at.
For whatever reason, because both those guys are cheap. You don't have, you know, a lot of guaranteed money tied up in them. But that said, the addition of those two seem to be strategically specific, especially with them going on and drafting a young defensive tackle and Keanu Benton. And obviously we don't have a track record on Omar, but you know, typically when they sign guys, you know, in that first wave there, before unrestricted free agents no longer count against the compensatory formula, those guys normally stick.
Right. We'll see if it continues, but it is a hefty number of players coming in. And, you know, I think there's a chance there that one of those guys becomes the exception. Mike Adesso says, Connor Hayward, a possible cut. I know we're not allowed to say this, but I think it's possible. If you're allowed to say, put it out there. We'll see. I disagree, but we'll go into camp and see what happens. And
his ability to his special teams ability is something that is going to really, really help him first and foremost. Second of all, and it'll be interesting to watch. Obviously, once you get into camp, once they get into camp in the preseason, there is how much transition do they do with him to more of that fullback H-back role, you know, kind of within it. Because but on top of it, he's still a guy, even if he, you know, the majority of his, I don't think his snaps are going to go up tremendously on offense. In fact, he might play a tick fewer offensive snaps overall. But he is a guy, when you do put him out there on offense, that we saw, you can split him out and do some things with him that way there. Look, he is 89 times the special teams player that Zach Gentry is.
Right.
You know, now on the flip side, you're not going to put Gentry. I mean, you're not going to put Connor Hayward as few times as possible as an end of the line of scrimmage type, you know, tied in with that. Whereas you'd be more apt, obviously, to put Gentry there. So I would consider them. I would consider Connor Hayward not making the 53-man roster as a huge surprise as we sit here right now.
Yeah, so if he is cut, that would, I think, qualify to John's question. John also asked, will Tomlin open up the passing offense? To an extent, but it's still going to be a run-focused offense. There's no question about that, John.
Yeah, you hope that you run well so you can open it up a little bit more, you know?
Exactly. Before I get to the next question, once you guys, many people have already read this. It's a very popular post on the site, but check out this article that Dave wrote yesterday explaining some of the contractual nuances and nitty-gritty of why Joey Porter Jr. remains unsigned, how that relates to Titans quarterback Will Levis, the 33rd pick of the 2023 NFL Draft. It's certainly valuable information, so I encourage you guys to check that out. Go to the questions here. More of a comment from, and I apologize if I mispronounced the name, Atodeso Leahy says, Big Ken gonna ball out despite Matt Canada's crap offense. So there's a declaration there. Andrew Vallet with a funny comment. If Cam gets injured, God forbid, you think Paul Skeens could fill in? He's a big guy. I know you made that joke about inside backer. Yeah, get him off ball in Pittsburgh, Dave.
Yeah. What is he, 6'4"? What?
I think he's listed like 6'5", 250, 6'6", 250. I forget the exact measurables, but he's a house. I think people said Strasburg. I think he's Garrett Cole. He's built like Garrett Cole.
Yeah, he's a big kid, man.
All right, next question comes from Spool de Boost. Are we comfortable with our inside linebacker spots? Comfort is not the word I would use. I think it's an uncertain group. They've certainly changed it over. It's almost entirely a brand new room besides Mark Robinson, who may not have a lot of defensive playing time this year. So I am lukewarm on the room, but we'll see what happens.
I'm in the show me
Yep.
stage where it comes to these ads. And look, I mean, Holcomb, when he's been healthy, we've seen him, with Washington make some plays, and he's a high effort, high motor guy. I think he's a smart player. I look forward to him, potentially wearing that green dot and being the hub of communication. I think he understands what he sees. From my understanding, he communicates real well, but it all goes, what are they going to do on the field? And you just cannot, with how they're going to be dependent on this defense in 2023. You cannot have another season like we saw last year with zero splash plays. I mean, you got to see some, few interceptions, forced fumbles. You got to see those tackles for losses by a couple of those inside linebacker guys. I mean, we've got to be talking about one of those guys at least once a game about some sort of, okay, Holcomb had a tackle for loss, and or Roberts, and something along those lines. So that's going to be the key element within that, because I mean they've obviously overhauled that room for a reason. There, you don't want to get in a situation where you have to have Tanner Muse on the field, or if he makes it Nick Kwiatkowski or anything along those lines. Obviously, the big hope, everybody's got their fingers crossed that Mark Robinson will make a big jump in his second season. But to hear Terrell Austin talk, doesn't sound like there's a lot of plans to get him a lot of snaps, at least right out of the chute there. Now, injuries obviously can change things. So fingers crossed, I guess, is the best way to look at this inside linebacker room right now.
Yeah, it's just too new to be comfortable, and the talent and the resumes of the guys they brought in aren't strong enough to make me incredibly optimistic. They've been down this road before, time and time and time again, and I'm afraid they're going to do it again, but we'll just let them play it out. Brian Jonker says, guys, I am insanely optimistic for our offense, and I think Canada will be the big difference. Don't laugh. I recently heard Canada was on fire, and I swear I could smell the smoke up here in New York State. That's a good dad joke from Brian Jonker. You didn't get any of the Canadian smoke out there in Vegas, right, Dave?
No. We didn't get any of that.
We got it bad in Pittsburgh. The one day I went outside, I mean, it smelled like somebody was burning something next door. I mean, it was like that intense. So it's cleared up now. But yeah, pretty crazy there. Steel Pastor, Dave, and Alex, just a thought. How about keeping an ongoing record post that has certain team statistics that are frequently used by the staff? In other words, a game-by-game and season-to-date. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that in terms of certain team stats. Can you give an example of what you're referencing? I don't know, Dave, if you can make more clarity of that.
I mean, I guess he's wanting things like, net yards per passing attempt, but we usually do updates, right? It's not when you get into adjusted net yards per passing attempt anyway, the clarity really doesn't come about with that statistic until you get volume in there, 6-7 games. So obviously you can look at it on a game by game basis, and probably just looking at that stat alone for both sides probably determine who won the game. But not all the time. But within that, you don't that stat really doesn't start showing itself until you get some volume in there. So I usually start picking that one up around week 7 or week 8, right around in there. Now, obviously, successful run rates and all like that. I mean, look, we've got Clayton on staff, and he'll be doing updates throughout the, posts throughout the week on certain statistics and things that we like to follow with advanced stats. So to have just one page that constantly has a running tab on it, probably not going to happen. We'll talk about a lot of these stats every week on the podcast, though,
Right. I mean, sometimes the week by week minutia isn't enough, because it may change dramatically based on either small sample size or just not a lot of movement if it's kind of more consistent. But if there's a follow-up to that, Steel Pastor, then I can maybe understand it a bit more.
Look, here's the things you want to watch for: successful run rates, explosive plays, adjusted net yards per passing attempt. I mean, if you're talking on, especially on the offensive side of football, those are going to be key for this team. I mean,
Yep.
obviously, really any NFL season, but coming out of the season that they had last year, you got a second-year quarterback. You look at the explosive plays last year. You look at Kenny's adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. Successful run rates were okay. I mean, they obviously going to have to be better if they want to open this thing up, have a lot more opportunities, maybe to not only open it up more, but maybe attack more of the middle of the field type situation there. But that's going to be probably the primary focus. And obviously, as Alex likes to say, Alex is a big situational football guy. And third and fourth down and short, really last year they were good. So you hope to see a carryover of the success that they had in third and fourth down and short situations there. Red zone, without a doubt. You would think that this team's going to need to convert more times than not touchdowns instead of field goals to get out of field these ball games with wins.
Couple of comments here from the chat, and appreciate you guys hanging out with us on this pretty quiet July Monday. Vegas TJG says, "Hella Steeler fans live in Vegas." Can you confirm, Dave? Are there hella Steeler fans in Vegas?
Oh yeah, look, I mean they've got a Steelers sports bar over there on Tropicana, Noreen's over there, and Vegas has become kind of a melting pot, if you will, of people across the country. I mean, there's a lot of people since we even moved out here 7 years ago, something like that. More and more people are coming to this area, people from California. And I mean, you don't really leave the house without seeing some sort of Pittsburgh gear, really.
Gotcha. Dead Planet says, "Can't wait for camp. You and me both." Dead Planet. Spool Deboo says, "I want Mark Robinson to play a lot. You and me both as well. I don't think we're going to get our wish based on Terrell Austin's comments and the signing of Nick Kwiatkowski, but we'll see. As Dave said, injuries can impact the team and radically change their outlook pretty quickly. So, just see what happens there." Brian Jonker, "Is George Pickens going to be the number one by the end of the season?" I'm not crazy about who's number one versus number two. You're both starters. If you're asking, will Pickens have more production, outproduce Deontay by the end of the year? I think the roles will be Pickens will be close in yards, more big plays, better yards per catch. Deontay will still have the volume, though, just given the more full route tree that he has. Pickens will expand his route tree, but not to the level that Deontay's currently at.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Johnson gets them in receptions, and I think Pickens might be able to outdo him in yardage. And then, as far as touchdown goes, I mean, obviously Deontay didn't have any last year. You want to see him get on the board for a few of them, but I would be surprised if either one of them hit double-digit touchdowns. I'll tell you that. So I think they both could be pretty. I think they both will be about one or two off of each other in the touchdown totals.
Yeah, the passing touchdown numbers were not pretty last year. Only one multi-passing touchdown game all of last year. That was against Tampa Bay. The last time that one Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback has thrown multiple touchdown passes in a game was week 14 of 2020. Well, I'm getting the stat wrong. I want to say, I got to double check the stat, but it's been a while in terms of like multi-touchdown performances. I think I want to correct myself here, but point is, not a lot of passing touchdowns last season. I forget. I had a stat with something, and I don't know if I'm even saying it correctly because I was researching something and writing about that. But anyway, we'll move on here and go to the question from Mike Adesso. Who is the Steelers' Paul Skeens? They don't seem to have any young generational talent. Maybe Pickens someday. Yeah, I would say Pickens might be the closest in terms of that freaky athlete kind of dude, but there probably isn't anybody as generational, quote unquote, as where Skeens is at. Broderick Jones, the upside is really interesting. Same with Porter in Washington, but that's a hard comparison to make.
Yeah, that is tough.
Vegas TJG says Dick LeBeau was on BMAC's show. He wrote about that. You see it here on the website. So Coach still looks really good. He does not look his age, that's for sure. So that was a really good interview from Brian McFadden.
Still sharp too with the memory and all. Boy, he can tell those stories.
Yes, he can. Really good interview. Be sure to check it out on his channel, the All Things Covered podcast. Let's see. Jared says he looks for Connor Hayward to have some big relevant plays. Cooking Knee says, is there a player that you were sure was going to be great, but you thought never got a fair chance in the NFL? That's kind of a big picture question.
Oh, wow.
Any names coming to mind immediately, Dave?
Oh.
Guy you thought was going to be the guy and didn't get a fair shot to work out.
Man, put on the spotlight. I could probably come up with, if I sat for an hour to think about it, probably, easily probably 20 of them. But off the cuff right now, I really can't just recall anybody really as of late, that kind of fits that criteria. I'm sure there are some, but I just can't think of any off the top of the head there.
I shouldn't say the only. The first name that came to mind for me was a quarterback that I'm sure nobody remembers. His name was Nathan Enderle. He was the pride of Idaho. Great quarterback for the Idaho Vandals when they were relevant before they went down to FCS. And people
roll potatoes
in the Kibby Dome. Amen to that. People forget it was the 2011 lockout or 2010 lockout, whatever the lockout year was. People thought, that wasn't too bad. They didn't really miss any time. There was one game that year canceled. It was the Hall of Fame game. It was the game Enderle was supposed to play in. It was canceled. Never got a shot because of it. He was with Mike Martz. I think he would have had a great career just if he could have had some opportunity. I'm still mad that the one game that got canceled in that lockout was the Hall of Fame game. Never got to see Enderle play, and he never had a career. So that's the one name that still burns deeply on. He never got a fair chance comment. Ross Swisher, my friend, if you make one more comment about Pickett, we've kind of been down this road before. We're gonna have to kick you out here for we get your stance on that. So that is the one warning we'll give here in the chat, and then we'll go back to the questions. Alex, we'll be keeping a close eye on the fullback position. That's from John Pennington. I'll be keeping a close eye on everything, on Connor Hayward, on Monty Pottebaum, on that group. So how many reps they get, we'll have to see. Pottebaum's reps could be hard to come by, but I'll be watching for that. Mike Odessa, if you were told Omar is going to make a trade for a spot on the 53, Kevin Colbert tradition with a 5th-round pick, what position would you hope it would be for, Dave? If you could basically upgrade one spot, I think I know where you're going to go with this, but what position would it be for?
I mean, if we're talking on a budget as well, too, we're talking, kind of lower, because look, anytime that they make, these, unless several years ago, Joe Hayden was cut and came on the market late, and they obviously was able to sign him. But if we're talking about trade type situations, they're usually, not overly flashy unless you get into get couple games into the season like they did with Minka several years ago or like that. I mean, I've been talking about backup center all off season.
Yep, I knew you were going there. Yep.
And look, history says that one or two guys that will end up on the 53-man roster aren't currently under contract right now. And that, if you look back at the trend of that going all the way back to what I run that back to 2012 or something like that. And I think only 1 year, was it 2018 or 19, that they didn't have one of those instances there. So I feel pretty confident that somebody that's not on this 90-man roster right now is going to end up on the 53-man roster. And I just can't help but think that it's going to end up being a backup center.
It's hard to disagree with that. I don't know what other position. Slot corner, maybe. If you could find there's nothing in free agency. You already signed your guy in Chandon Sullivan. Maybe a trade option. So I'll just be different and say slot corner. But I think backup center makes a ton of sense there. And I'm with you there, Dave. Let's see what else we have. That's from K. Jackson, Pittsburgh. I'm glad to hear from you again. It's been a little bit. Says, if the Steelers offense somehow falters early on, do you think they will take away Canada's play calling duties? Pickett is in year 2, and a new offensive line should allow a more versatile attack, shouldn't it? It's all speculation. Depends on why. Is it injury? Is it really truly bad play calling? Is it more player coaching based? I'm not going to rule it out, but it is just a hard hypothetical to entertain that it's hard to give an answer.
Yeah, it's very hard, especially, this team doesn't have obviously a history of firing guys. Coordinators once the season gets underway there. So I would imagine it would have to be pretty damn awful to get anywhere near that discussion early on in the season.
John D, hi guys, love your podcast. I listen every week. Thank you so much, John. Late question on the Pickett wedding, but do you even think Kenny considered inviting Ben? LOL. I have no idea what the wedding guest list looked like. I know Ben obviously I don't believe was there. I don't know if he was ever in consideration. Probably not enough time. Those guys have known each other to offer the invite to the wedding.
Yeah, I don't know. And I know they talked about having, starting off and as it is pretty much with everybody, right? You start off with a big list and you have to try to whittle that thing down. I don't know if he invited him or not. I really don't know.
I'm not even sure how many Steelers were there. I mean, I know somewhere. I know Calvin Austin had a video.
There was
sure
a handful of them there for sure. Yeah.
Was there any, was Cam
offensive.
there? Was Trubisky there? I don't know if I saw any photos of those guys.
I think Trubisky was there, right? They seem to show up in everything.
Their wives are, I'm sure they were there. I just never saw a photo of them.
Yeah. I think wasn't Gentry and Firemouth there? And
okay.
I think Austin and... Yeah, I don't know who all was there.
All right. Let's see. Next question comes from Pittsburgh Toddy 86. If, God forbid, Kenny trips up coming out of the gate, how many subpar games would it take for the Steelers to bench him? Again, it's another hypothetical that's hard to entertain. He's going to have a long leash. I mean, it's not going to be a quick pull like Trubisky. So I don't know what that number is, but he's going to have a lot of margin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It would have it would have to be, I think, him not being 100% healthy from whatever, if he has anything going on for him to get benched. And I mean, he would really have to have some bad games in there. As Alex said, I mean, he's in the second season. I mean, you got to give him a little bit of a leash and the ability, God forbid he has, an awful game or whatever. You got to give him the ability to bounce back from that, right? To find out what he's made of and all like that. So, I mean, he's their quarterback. And if he's healthy, he's going to be out there.
Yep. That's basically all that there is to it. Let me scroll back up. Mark Miller with a comment. If I win the Powerball, can I be your free assistant in Latrobe? If I sponsor you, I can hold the umbrella and fetch cold drinks. I appreciate that.
You can do that for free.
Yeah. He's offering for free, but I guess he's winning the Powerball, so he doesn't have to go to his job. But I think I'm okay. I don't even have an umbrella. I never bring an umbrella because you can't write and hold an umbrella, so you just got to get soaked. I mean, that's just the way training camp goes.
Always bring a towel.
All right, little towely in the chat here. One of the 64 people here. So, K. Jackson, Pittsburgh, another question. Since the Steelers seem to be turning over every stone, what do you think about them bringing in Matt Araiza as competition for Presley Harvin? That's the punter that's now been exonerated on the allegations against him. Imagine he'll be back in the NFL at some point. But they bring in Braden Mann off a waiver claim. I think those two guys will battle it out. So, understand the thought. I was a big Araiza fan, the punt god coming out of SDSU, but I think it's going to be Mann versus Harvin.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to let those guys battle it out, and whoever wins, they go into the season with. But within that, they've got to have consistency. So whoever wins the job might not keep the job.
True.
And then maybe if a guy like Ariza's, out there at that point, maybe you look at that situation. But right now, it feels like it's going to be either or with Harvin and Mann. And then once again, whoever wins that job, I hope they're renting, at least for the 2023 season, because they got to get some more consistent. Both Mann and Harvin have big legs.
Yep.
We've seen that, but the thing is it's been a consistency issue with both of them.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Mann was claimed because they're kind of the same dude, Harvin and Mann, like big leg, kind of inconsistent. Ray Guy award winners in college. I mean, there's a bit of difference. I think Harvin's a really exceptional holder. Mann can do kickoffs, but they're pretty similar. So it's kind of redundant to have those guys battle. But again, it's good there's competition. There really was no push for Harvin last year, and Harvin did get better last year. So it's good to say that out loud. But that'll be the battle in camp. It'll be Mann versus Harvin. By the way, I have this photo on screen. Mike Adams. I knew he lost a bunch of weight, but really hadn't heard him in an interview setting since he retired, basically.
I had to do a double take on him
Yeah.
again, and I saw a couple of years back where he was trying to make the move to tight end or something like that. And all.
Right.
He looks like hey, here's the thing. He still looks young. Good for him.
Yeah, for sure. And very scary story he had told about the stabbing. Because we didn't know those. I mean, we knew obviously whenever he had that stabbing, he was stabbed, I should say. Like, it was bad, but I don't know if we knew the details about how bad it was. And did you know he had a hernia that year in 2013 that... Because I tried to go back on the site to see about that. I didn't see any reference to it. So it's one of those things where you never know what a guy's going through.
Mm-hmm.
Very generous $20 super chat from Andrew Spriggs. Thank you so much. He says, what is the counter argument to the salary cap isn't real? Friend is a Saints fan, and I'm sure you guys are aware of the constant restructuring the Saints do every year to comply. We are. I can let Dave run with this more. My short answer to this question, and we appreciate the super chat, is the cap is real. It's just very malleable. It's very flexible and can be massaged to basically do whatever you want, but the cap is real.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is real, and at some point you have to account for every cap dollar. So that's what makes it real in and of itself. The other aspect of it too is a lot of people forget that there's really two discussions here. There's cash and then there's cap, and teams have to spend over a 3-year period at least 90% of the league's total cap total over that 3-year span in cash. And how they go about doing it, because look, if you give a guy let's say a guy has a base salary of $1 million in 2023, but you give him a signing bonus of, let's say, $10 million, that obviously gets spread out over the maximum is 5 years if he's under contract that long, but for the length of the contract against the cap, that $10 million goes into 2023 as a cash expenditure, whereas it doesn't show up as a cash expenditure in the other years there. But sooner or later, you have to account for every cap dollar that you spend there. It doesn't go away. Now, obviously, you got to remember that a lot of these contracts aren't guaranteed. But I mean, for even for the non-guaranteed players, the game check that they have. Let's say let's say they're on a non-guaranteed contract, and it's just a 1-year deal, and you didn't give them any signing bonus, but they played for three games. Well, whatever their 3 game checks were goes against the cap, before you cut them there. So it very much is real. And then you look at the Saints and what they had to do. Especially they got themselves in a world of hurt, in the COVID year. Man, how many players did they restructure that year? 9, 10, something like that. And then obviously I think somewhere within there you had the Breeze retirement. They had to do something, rearrange some money on there, and I think they're after this year. I think they've got 1 more year to try to get themselves kind of out of the weeds when it comes to that situation there. So the fact of the matter is it doesn't go away. And the way you help get yourself through these situations of the restructures and all like that is to have these players play out the contracts.
Right.
Where you get in trouble is where you restructure. Where you get in trouble is a situation like you have with Stephon Tuitt,
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. So the Saints, I mean, you can make it work, but the rent comes due at some point. So that's the old can kicking that you talk about a lot. One other kind of question related to that I want to throw back at you there, Dave, from David Kapoor, who says NFL cap is way better than the non-cap in baseball. Don't you think that's why the NFL is so much more competitive? What are your quick thoughts on? Do you prefer the cap?
Absolutely, I do. I love it. I love every aspect of it. I love.
Why, in relation to like baseball, is it better for like if football didn't have a cap, would the game be better or worse?
I think it'd be worse because you're smart. Because if you are you putting a cash expenditure on top of it, which is essentially still a cap, right? It's just, you're capping spending. I mean, if you had uncapped spending in the NFL, you'd have teams with the owners that had the deepest pockets spending the most on the players, which essentially you have happening in baseball, right?
Right.
I think you look at the leagues that have salary caps, and I think at least you have chances on, a year-to-year basis of your team, if they do things right, of potentially winning a championship. And then in baseball, you have situations where you have the Pirates and the Oakland A's, and along those lines, where they're super, super dependent on talent coming through the farm system and coaching, right?
Yeah, and you're seeing those leagues try to put some consequences to those big market teams. In basketball, there's the second apron, which I don't know what that is exactly, but I think it's some sort of constraint. And I think in baseball, there's some, there's teams that are falling in the draft order if they spend X amount over whatever the numbers are. And so there's kind of those leagues trying to rein those teams in a bit because they're realizing how quickly things can get out of hand.
Hey, look, and back to it. When you talk about, I know just a tiny bit about NHL salary cap, enough to be dangerous on the whole average. I don't completely understand why they do it the way that they do it, but it's still a cap system in place there. But whoever came up, whoever was the people that put the NFL salary cap together, so it can be kind of massaged on a year-to-year basis, and yet still have cap the 90% rule in place when it comes to cash. There's nothing really to prevent teams from overspending in cash, right? But revenues. You're also running a business on top of it. So and within that, though, a salary cap really prevents a team in one off season of going crazy, or or the craziest that maybe you'll see it in recent history is what the Rams did, right? Where they kind of went all in, and now look, at the situation they're in. So I love everything about the way the Steelers, the NFL does the cash and the cap and everything related to it. I think it's just a masterful job of whoever put that original plan together.
There's got to be a book about the masterminds behind how that came together. I don't know where to start on that.
And you can't really find a lot about, the creation, the actual creation of it, even back in the old newspapers. And, because I've got a subscription to newspapers.com and use that quite regularly for research, but it's hard to find, other than it coming into existence as to the bells and whistles of what went into actually creating it and why.
Yeah, it would be a really good story. Hopefully we can find someone someday that can help tell it. I want to get through some questions here. Got another $5 super chat from DTG108. Thank you so much. He says, "Hey Alex, coming to the Berg with a buddy for the first time in September. Need some food recommendations besides Permani's. I'm not the best Pittsburgh tour guide, to be honest. There's some good steakhouses. Pamela's for breakfast is something to go to. Not that it's a restaurant, but Sheetz. Never been to Sheetz before. You got to go. That's just good. Like, it's gas station food, but it's good gas station food. So there's a bunch of places down there. I would say Pamela's, though, for breakfast. I think it's open still. There's maybe some controversy or some question there. I might be wrong, but I'm sure your buddy can help you out there too. But thank you for the super chat.
And David O knows, even though he doesn't live there, he's there enough that he knows probably the places to go and things to do and see.
Hit up Subburger on Twitter, and he can probably give you some additional information. All right, Dave, about 10 minutes left. Thank you guys for being here. Let's get through these couple of questions. Jay Gilliam says, what ratio do you think would be optimal for splitting rushing carries between Najee and Jalen? I don't have a particular number. I think, Harris will be first and second down guy primarily. Warren, third down guy. Warren will mix in some first and second down opportunity. So, 2/3 to 1/3 roughly would be my first stop, but I'm not married to a particular set of numbers.
Yeah, I think it's flow of the game plays a lot in that as well, too. Obviously, down in distance, and, how many times did you have to run Najee in the first half of a game? All those little things will come into it. But I think, I got to admit, I would like to see the ball get put in Jalen Warren's hands a few more times in his second season, and I think there's a decent chance of that happening. He's obviously the more explosive, especially I think in the passing game. If you got him the football out in space, potentially he could pick up a few more explosive plays overall. But I mean, he still touched the football 77 times on the ground and 28 through the air last season. So that's not awful, especially for him being a rookie. Can you up that by about, I don't know, 15 more touches? I mean, or 17 more touches, one more touch a game. I think that's doable.
Yeah, especially for how, run heavy and run centric and get the ball in the hands of the running backs this offense will be. Jason says, our friend Jason says, hello, Daleks. Yes, Vegas is a big Steelers town, but there have always been lots of fans of AFC and NFC West teams too. I'm sure Dave can speak to that, but of course you would expect that out west.
It's a melting pot, yeah.
Yeah, it's just more uncommon to see the East Coast-ish teams out in the west side of the country. But yeah, I'm sure there's what do you think, besides the Raiders and Steelers, is there a third team that kind of gets represented a lot? The Cardinals maybe, or the Chargers? Not many Chargers fans, but what do you think is kind of third place out there?
I think it's just a smattering of okay. Nothing really has stuck out other than obviously Raiders and Steelers stuff, and Steelers for obvious reasons because it's obviously what we do is recognizable and all like that, and obviously this being the Raiders town and all like that. But I can't say that one fan base sticks out. Playoff, the Eagle, all of them come through here really. I mean. Okay. Depending on what's going on in the playoffs, I'm sure fan bases will get a group of guys or girls together and make a trip out here for a playoff game or regular season game. So it's just a smattering.
Zachary says, what are the main factors holding Kenny back from taking a second-year jump similar to Trevor Lawrence last season, since you think sub 20 touchdowns, sub 3,500 yards? I think he can make a jump similar. It's just the offense won't be as pass-heavy. It won't be as much in Pickett's hands as it was probably with Lawrence last year. So if you were to extrapolate, I don't know how many passes Lawrence threw last year, 600 or so. If you go to that point, you may get some numbers that are similar. But I mean, I think Lawrence threw 25 touchdowns. The yards might have been up a bit, but if Pickett throws 20 and 3,500, he's not that far off from where Lawrence was in year two. And again, this is going to be a more run-heavy offense, and that's kind of the difference between those two guys.
Yeah, look, the biggest thing with him is, once again, don't turn the football over and play good situational football. I do think that they're going to have a lot more geared to run in down low in the low red zone and all like that. Look, you go back to Roethlisberger's second season. He didn't light it up when it came to touchdown passes, but they still won.
Right.
I think here's the thing. When it's all said and done, I care less about the yards and the total touchdowns as much as I do, the adjusted net yards per passing attempt number. He can't get sacked. He can't throw interceptions. If he's not getting sacked and he's not throwing interceptions, then the rest really should take care of itself. As long as other people are, as long as they're not going 3 and out, and only running. Only having 7 possessions a game and not moving the football down the field there. But I mean, if he's not getting sacked and he's not throwing interceptions, I think everything else will take care of itself, and especially if they're running the football. So can they win? Can they win 10 games in 2023 if Kenny Pickett only throws 18 touchdowns and 3,500 yards? The answer is yes, especially if they get the defensive play that they're hoping to get and they're able to run the football. So I wouldn't put too much the statistic I would put emphasis on is the adjusted net yards per passing attempt number. That's got to improve over last year's number.
Right. And hopefully if Pittsburgh's, winning late, they can run late. And you're not asking Kenny Pickett to go on a bunch of late fourth quarter drives where the stats come up. I mean, the Jacksonville was really bad the first half of last year, like Pittsburgh. They just were a little bit less bad, and they kind of turned things around as well, and their offense picked back up. So Lawrence got some production because they're probably playing catch-up a lot that first half of the season. Let's see. K. Jackson, Darnell Washington should be utilized as a red zone target with the size and catch radius, shouldn't he? He should help us either blocking or receiving, right? Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's a big target. He should be an asset in the red zone. There's probably no debate about that. Don't expect the guy to catch 6 touchdowns, but he can be a weapon down there if he wants to be targeted.
What did he have? 3 red zone touchdowns in college, and it really is through no fault of it. I mean, you got all those weapons down there that they had and all like that. I mean, they had so many options on offense there. And the thing that kind of really hurt his draft stock overall was they had so many outside beyond the supposed whatever knee issue. People were talking about him. He didn't have a huge amount of receptions in college overall. He wasn't used that much in the red zone, and he was as a blocker, obviously, and that's obviously how he's going to make his mark initially in Pittsburgh here. But can you do things with him down low? Can you have some 2 tight end groupings with him and Freiermuth once you get down low and run some play action stuff? And look, you throw it anywhere in his zip code. The one thing, there was one catch. Who was it against? Was it LSU or no? It was
Kent State. Yeah, the one someone got on you for what? It's against Kent State when it's like a beautiful one-handed catch.
Yeah, I mean we've seen him have he has body control, and he can make some tough catches. And man, there were a couple of them that he had to stick them long arms out there and get and all like that. So, I mean, obviously Pat Freiermuth's going to be your primary receiving tight end, but long story short, I won't be shocked if he comes out of his rookie season with two or three touchdown receptions.
Sure, I'm with you there. Just a couple minutes left. We'll kind of speed through the last set of questions. K. Jackson, I keep saying that mushmouth, I'm sorry, says, what chance would you give the Steelers to win the AFC North this year? Not 0, but low, but they'll be competitive and hopefully make a wild card spot. But I think the Bengals are still going to be the obvious favorites there.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's hard, unless you're just flat out biased. It's hard to, from where we sit right now, with these teams, to emphatically say the Steelers are going to win the division. Now, things happen, as we've seen in the past in NFL seasons. I really think that it's the Bengals, and I really think it's the group where other 3 teams are just really tightly knit together. And as we've pointed out several times, this division last year went 3-3 against each other across the board.
Yep.
And I think it would be mighty. I wouldn't expect that to happen again, just because the chances of 4 teams going 3-3 within a division, especially back-to-back seasons, is the chance of that happening is just really, really low there. But I could see I could see it being close in the division with Baltimore, Cleveland, and the Steelers all battling for second place.
Sure, the Bengals have earned the right to be the favorites. Pittsburgh can knock them off, but they have to take it from them. They got to prove it, and so that's what they'll try to do in 2023. What else do we have here? Chilla21, Dave always has the fire references. Put it in reverse, Terry. You tweeted that or said that the other day. I still don't know what that exactly is. I think you might have explained it, but that is your Dave saying.
Look, not bad for 55, staying in touch with how do you do? How do you do, fellow kids?
Right. Although Chilla21 could be as old as you, we're not quite sure. I think he's probably
I'm
in
starting
your
to see
group.
some stuff on the internet now, though, and TV and all that. I don't know what it means. I Google a lot of this stuff nowadays.
I don't know any of the music artists anymore. That's how old. That's how I know I'm getting old. I don't know who this new rapper is. He's doing this award show. Never heard of this guy. That's how I know I'm getting old. Zach says, what are we thinking of the chances of a vet linebacker or a slot corner still being added? Vet linebacker, less likely. Slot corner, I could see a cut downs, waiver, trade, but we'll just have to wait and see. I don't think those positions get added to prior to training camp.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Let's see if we have Kevin, the Elder God. Good to hear from you. Do you feel there's a particular position surplus that we could flip for a position of need? And if so, what position would it be? What do you think Pittsburgh's heavy at right now, Dave?
Where they're heavy at, what, positionally?
Yeah, where they have kind of a surplus where they could, guard, maybe, for example, a Kevin Dotson gets flipped.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, offensive line. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, if there's a player that's dealt last minute, that later on this summer, it could potentially be a Kevin Dotson or something like that. Outside of the center position, I mean, there's a lot better depth on this team, or at least perceivable depth as we sit here right now. I mean, thank God this team didn't have to get into Jesse Davis and
Trent
you know the
Scott.
yeah,
Yeah.
Trent Scott last year and all like that, and it allowed that the byproduct of that was the ones that they did have were able to gel and all like that and all. So yeah, I would and they made it clear in the press conferences that the intention was to have a presence and have an identity on the offensive side of football with that line, and it feels like they have that right now.
Don't have really time to have a full in-depth conversation, but obviously, offensive line there is some depth, which is a stark contrast from where they were at just 2 years ago. But do you want to trade good offensive line depth? Because it just takes a couple injuries and you regret it. Remember when they had good quarterback depth when they traded Josh Dobbs, and then a week later Ben's out for the year in 2019. You wish you would have held on to Josh Dobbs in some sense. So do you trade away quality offensive linemen or good offensive line depth and just hope that group stays healthy enough?
Well, I mean, you also had the trade off too of it's 2.7 million that Dotson. That's a lot to pay a backup, where maybe you can put it somewhere else on top of it there. So there's a trade off of what are you getting back in return? I mean, I'm not just going to trade them for a bag of footballs and a 7th round pick, but if I could get a 5th or something like that, I'd certainly consider it, assuming everybody stays healthy up until that point. Could you do something and end up getting a center out of it, a backup center out of it? Something along those lines. Maybe a slot corner or something along those lines. So I'm not just doing it to do it. It would have to make sense on what I'm getting back in return. But I see the point. But salary is a variable in this as well too.
Right, that's fair. And I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, I think it's certainly plausible, and more likely, the most likely thing that could happen will be a Dotson trade. But we'll see how the group looks in training camp. Just rapid fire here really quickly, Mr. Spaceman. How quickly do you see Nick Herbig, DeMarvin Leal solidifying their role in the defense? It's still to be determined. Herbig as a rookie, get in the special teams, go from there. Leal, I still don't know what's going to happen with him in terms of solidifying anything. So it's kind of wait and see mode there.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'd be surprised if Herbig played many defensive snaps, barring injuries. He's going to be a special teams demon, however. And Leal, we sit and wait to see, how they use him and how they can find a way to carve out snaps for him on top of it.
Randy Wagner says, Alex and Dave, thank you guys for the coverage. It's amazing coverage. Thank you, Randy. Appreciate you always being in these live streams. Let's see. I saw Jeremy Nelson with Najee's great hands. I hate to see him off the field on 3rd downs. Do you think Canada will be apt to line Najee up outside, maybe slot, and keep Warren in the backfield? It's the old pony question. This is kind of more towards 3rd down, maybe in some 3rd and short, 3rd and 3 type moments. But you got a bunch of receivers out there you want to play too. So if you're keeping Najee on, keeping 2 backs on, you're taking one of those guys off. There'll be some flexibility, but that would be, I think, a pretty rare instance.
Yeah, I would imagine once you get to training camp, there'll be a practice or two where there are 2 running backs out there, and we'll have the annual pony backfield episode discussion and how they won't use it.
Yeah, that's looking forward to that conversation that we have each year. Who do you want as OC if Canada stinks it up? I have no idea. That's a million miles away. We'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. And I think there was a question, do you think the first play of the preseason will be a Calvin Austin jet sweep? Probably not the first play, but you're going to see it, I'm sure, throughout the summer.
I'd like to put it in somebody's mind at some point,
Sure.
Hey, this is something that you better be this is something the 49ers better put in their defensive game plan to look for. So you'll see it. It wouldn't hurt my feelings I'd do it. I'd tend to do it more in the tune-up game because that, I would do it that way, and hopefully he rips one off for 25 yards and give somebody else something to think about.
All right, that fair point. Definitely going to see it first play. Probably dive up the middle is my guess on the first play. Pretty boring. Stack or starve. I like the defense a lot this year. Only worry is
I'd run play action deep down the field on the first play.
You would do it on the second play, in the third play, in the fourth play.
That give them something else, saying Kenny ain't scared. You know, yeah, that'd be the first play. Yeah, assuming I get the defense that I, you know, that I can run it against and all like that. I wouldn't be scared of doing that.
Stack or starve, worried about the linebackers in coverage, but thinks the offense may be stronger if they can move the ball well this year. Yeah, that's the hope. I think this offense will be stronger than a year ago. Dead Planet says O-line is better, defense better. Kenny, not sure, but with those two aspects, there's no reason they can't target around 10 wins. Yeah, they won 9 games last year with all the mess they had. The offense just bumpy as heck, losing TJ Watt for half the year, a pretty tough schedule, to miserable losses to Buffalo, to Philadelphia. So yeah, 10 wins is certainly realistic.
Yeah, I would think that that's an achievable goal from where we sit right now.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. Appreciate you guys being here. If you missed this, will be an archive version on Steelers Depot posted in just a little bit. So thank you guys for being here. One more stream before training camp begins, and then we'll have them during training camps. I believe the off days are Mondays, and so we'll be able to kind of fit these streams in going forward. But again, one more stream right before training camp opens up. Thank you guys for being here. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Dave, thank you for being here as always.
And thank you for putting this on. Good job as usual. And thank you for everybody showing up. Peace and love, everybody. Have a great night.
All right, thank you guys so much. Be sure to stay with the channel. Have some different content coming for you guys, some different videos in the coming days and weeks. For those who follow my baseball game out of the park, there'll be a video coming up probably within a couple of days as well. So thank you guys for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.